Hey, everybody. This is Don McCauley. I'm the president and founder of Law Preview. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Tamara Fairhurst and Noreen Kelly, both of McGuireWoods. Tamara, you're not based in New York, are you? Or you're down in
Charlotte.
Down south somewhere, I thought. Cool.
Yeah, Charlotte.
And
yep.
we're going to be great. We're going to be giving you guys the do's and don'ts and tips for OCI for rising 2Ls. I imagine that most of the audience who's listening to this webinar right now has just completed their first year. Congratulations. So now it's a matter of, after you recharge your batteries, maybe just completed that law review writing competition. You're looking for a breather, and you decided to settle in for a night with us to talk about OCI advice. Yippee! I'm sure this is exactly what you were planning all year after a hard first year of law school. But it's a necessity. So, Tamara, why don't we start off with you and just quickly introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself and what got you to McGuireWoods.
Okay. I'm the Senior Manager of Attorney Recruiting at McGuireWoods in the Charlotte, North Carolina office. I oversee attorney recruiting all from entry level all the way to partner recruiting for 6 of our offices. North Carolina, we have 3 offices, and Texas, we have 3 offices. And prior to that, I was at Nixon Peabody in various recruiting roles. And prior to that, I was a litigation paralegal. So that's how I got where I am.
Gotcha. Do you run the summer program for the students?
Yes, we have a summer program in our Charlotte office as well as our Dallas office.
Any big crazy things? Any big crazy things like events that you guys have for the summer? Like I remember a couple of years ago, everyone was touting that everyone's going to Hamilton and going to see Beyonce.
I wish.
Nothing on tap.
We did that. No, we do. We have a whitewater center in Charlotte, so we do whitewater rafting, which is fun. Just a lot of local events just to show them what Charlotte's like. Same for Dallas, just to show them the city if they're not from that area. So, and other events to get the attorneys out of the office as well with them, socializing. So good,
and plenty of hearty lunches. That's yet another piece of advice
always serve
that I love to give people.
Yeah.
Everyone who's a rising 2L. Well, not only that, but I'm like, everyone who's a rising 1L or 2L should be like in a serious workout plan right now, because you want to walk into your the 2L summer program in tip-top shape because you're about to put on about 15 pounds.
Well, it's a funny story. We had a happy hour with our summers, and they said, "Are you going to throw those cheese and crackers away?" They're like, "We'll take them." So they walked away with our appetizers as well afterwards. So they loved it.
Tamara, look, it's either that or ramen noodles. All right,
that's right. That's right.
Noreen, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Noreen, oh, great. So, how about a little bit about you and where you like to take the summers to lunch? We can finish up with that.
Well, I've got a list. So I'm the managing partner of the McGuireWoods New York City office. I've been there for about 4 years. Actually came from Latham, where I summered a million years ago in 1997, or 1998 rather. I was a graduate of NYU, and I did OCI at NYU, and I remember it well. I can still feel like the tension and the pain, but it's all good. You get through it. But so I did that. I was a litigation associate and partner at Latham for a long time, and now do mostly white collar and securities litigation.
Cool. All right. Well, let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I am the luckiest guy you will ever meet in your life. I went to law school academically untested, as I like to say. I, majored in wiffle ball at Loyola College down in Baltimore, Maryland, and then, by the grace of God, got into a law school and, somehow turned it around in my first year, where I ended up number 4 in my class, and I got the big job in New York City that I thought I wanted at the time, and then realized, hey, there might be a better way for me to use my legal degree, and started a law school prep course, which was ultimately acquired by Barbary. So I've seen it all. I've done, I relived the horrors of being a 1L every for the last 20 years. but I also have had a big firm experience and really enjoyed the summer program. I got to tell you, that was the best. When the summers would come back, I spent 4 years at a firm called Rogers & Wells, which is now Clifford Chance. And when the summers would come back every summer, it was like, oh, thank God they're back. Because it was a breath of fresh air. I loved the summer program and when I was a summer, and then also as an attorney there as well. Okay, so let's jump right into it, and let's not waste your time. I'm afraid that Noreen's going to bill me at her hourly rate, which I cannot afford. So that's another thing, Noreen. Turn off your clock, okay? This is not. Hey,
that wasn't in the contract, then.
So I'll ask you both. For the past couple of years, we've had it's been maybe not a couple of years. We're talking about 2010, 2011, 2012. It was really, really hard, the entry-level hiring into a large law firm like McGuireWoods. But I feel like now the word on the street is that we're turning a corner, or we have turned a corner. What's your sense in terms of hiring? Have you seen your summer programs grow in size over the last couple of years, and what are you expecting this year?
Yeah, I think we've stayed pretty steady. We have a total of 19 summer associates this year, firm-wide. We are hoping to have a few more next year, and we're strategically looking at where other markets we can grow them in, but we are looking to slowly increase that number, but it's been pretty steady with the decline of the economy. So I know there's been firms that had 50 summer associates, and that was normal, but we're definitely on the more conservative side. When we hire our summer associates into the program with the intention to hire them as falls if it all works out, so they're not competing against each other, which is a little bit different sometimes than other firms. Right.
Yeah, I remember my summer program had 48 people in it, and then during I stayed very close contact with the folks at my firm after I'd left, and I was talking to the woman who handled the recruiting program, and she said, "Yeah, we went from 48 people in your program down to 5 in 2011." I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
It's really it was a shock to the system, and I guess then all the partners realized that, hey, we can do a lot more with less. Noreen, I don't know.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's true not only right, and not only just in the entry-level recruiting market. I think the legal market in general changed. So obviously the whole market just contracted dramatically at the credit crisis. And then both clients and law firms sort of got to a new normal. And I don't see them. I mean, maybe a generation will go by and memories fade, but I don't think it's going to be the boom years of 2004 through 6 anytime soon. I just think people got used to doing more with less.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Which makes it well, I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, right? I mean, it makes it a lot harder as an entry level 1L or 2L, to get their foot in the door, which is why hopefully we'll answer some more questions and help these students have a competitive advantage as they move forward. In terms of OCI, do you guys where's the majority of your hires coming from? Are they coming from OCI? Are they coming from job? Like, I know there are now regional job fairs and resume drops. How do they come in tomorrow?
A majority of ours come in through OCI, but there are a few that we've received. We do attend various job fairs as well. We put those under the same category as on-campus interviews as well. But the resume drops or the write-ins, we have gotten some really good candidates from, and I think that starts with a connection with someone at the firm. So, for instance, if you find someone that went to NYU like Noreen and you're at NYU and you want to make that connection with her and you're interested in her practice group, really getting to know the attorneys and making that connection, sometimes those resume drops will be more advantageous than an OCI.
And then otherwise, is it just a blind drop? How does it work? if they don't have a connection or they somehow can't make a connection, which everybody, if they haven't learned it by now, everybody needs to know.
Yeah.
Like, it's really about your network and cultivating a good network of folks.
Yeah, I think a cover letter explaining why they're interested in the firm, and then talking about why they're interested in that specific region or that specific office really would stand out. Because sometimes you might lived your entire life in New York and want to be in Charlotte. Explain that in your cover letter, or talk to why that specific firm is something that you're looking for in the future. Maybe it's a good cultural fit. Talk about that and why you think you would be a good fit for that. I think that would stand out as well.
What about resumes and writing samples? What are the big do's and don'ts that you've seen, horror stories and/or really creative ways to catch somebody's attention?
The first thing I would say is proofreading. A lot of times, Nori and I were talking about this, we see McGuireWoods as 2 words, and it's actually 1 word. And we have a partner that won't even look at the materials when he sees that in a cover letter. So just know the firm that you're applying for. Make sure you're spelling the attorney's names right. Make sure you're spelling the law firm's name right. Make sure you're getting the practice group right that you're interested in. Make sure there is that specific practice group at the firm. Do your research on that firm. And make sure it's a 1-page resume.
There's nothing like a typo.
Yes. Yes.
So wait, I'm sorry. You said a 1-page resume?
Yeah. Make sure it's 1 page. Yeah. There's no reason a law student should have a 2-page resume, and they're not going to read both pages.
Gotcha. And then in terms of writing samples, what are you looking for?
I think,
Noreen, do you want to take that
I would say, writing samples are a funny thing. I mean, I would first of all assume that many hands were on it. And I don't mean to say that it's, done badly if that's the case. I just think it's in the ordinary course, even if someone, let's say, for instance, was a judicial intern, probably the clerk reviewed it, probably the judge reviewed it. There's nothing wrong with that, but one presumes that even if you were the principal draftsman, like that other people looked at. So I don't read, in fact, I don't think many writing samples are read cover to cover. We're not looking at to say, looking for ingenious arguments or legal insights. Again, I would mostly look at it for form, English. is the grammar there? Is the presentation there? Are there typos? Is it done neatly and professionally and presented well? I mean, obviously I'll skim through it and see if it seems to be making sense. But it's not really, I don't think many people analyze them for, do they interpret that case correctly or that sort of thing. It's more, can they present a professional product? I can teach them, an area of the law or make sure that they interpret this or that correctly. So I would say professional presentation more than anything.
Great, and it now leads into the next question where I see there's 2 question marks, which is not a typo, Maureen. I think it was just such an important question that I was stressed. All right, so okay, let's overlook the double question marks at the end of the next question. But oh boy, here we go. So in terms of research, because Tamara mentioned before, like researching the practice areas, researching the attorneys. I'm a big believer that you don't show up at an interview, asking questions that you could have found out before. But I mean, that's a very, very broad statement. In terms of even you, Noreen, like when you're interviewing somebody, like how prepared do you want them to be? And what do you want them to know about McGuireWoods? What do you want them to know about you? And, how would they go about doing that? Just, giving, again, stepping back to your rising 2L self, what would you recommend?
I'm sure I didn't do this well. But here's what
I don't think I did it well either. Yeah.
It's amazing I haven't done. What I would say to do now is there are certain questions certainly are so baseline. I don't expect someone to come into my office and know more about McGuireWoods than I do, which is to know every little practice area and how many attorneys are here and there and everywhere and what they've worked on lately. But, don't ask me where the main office is. That's a goofy question. It's the most basic facts, right? Where do we have major offices? How many lawyers are at the firm? If you're interested in a practice area and you plan to ask me about it, make sure that you've looked into it. I don't expect you to know whether or not we do patent prosecution if you're not interested in it, but don't come ask me about, some area of the law that we don't even cover. Like that would be embarrassing. So I think it's, knowing the most basic facts about the institution, certainly. That's baseline. And then I think what catches people's eye is having research, usually ahead of the callbacks, maybe not at OCIs, but at the callback stage,
right.
You'll get a roster of the lawyers that you're going to meet with. And, just read their bio. It doesn't take but 10 minutes, right? And find one or two things that you can connect on. Maybe you're struggling to, but it might be that you went to the same law school, or they worked on a case that you found some interest, or the same undergraduate, or just something so that in the back of your mind you can raise it or throw it into the conversation, because I think it shows, it shows diligence, it shows preparation, and professionalism. To show up just sort of blank, I think, is very uninspiring.
I would agree. Kamara, you have anything else to add?
No, I think that covers it.
Yeah, it's so, like I said before, like some of the best interviews I had when I was a rising, 2L were something that, I remember, and you might even know him, Maureen. Do you know Mark Pomerantz? He's big in white collar.
Of course.
Yeah, he was my favorite interview of all time, right? Because we sat there and talked about mountain biking for an hour. It was just like we just hit a groove. He had mentioned that he, it was somehow showed up in his bio, and we just started chatting about it. And, we just literally, there was no law. There was no, what are you writing your law review note on, or, which I think you should also have an answer for as well.
Right.
But it was more, there was no sales pitch. It was just a conversation. And I think that, a couple things now that I look back and I've gotten a little bit older is, one is you just want to scream good judgment, especially, during the initial interview, just to get your foot in the door. And then obviously, on the callback interview, like the last thing you want to scream is, bad judgment, which, I think, and actually this happened to during an initial interview for somebody at Latham. Do you remember Elizabeth Kritchmar she ran your legal recruiting for Latham a while back. I don't know when you left Latham for McGuireWoods, but every year I would sit down with her. I would sit down with her and I'd be like, give me like the horror story from this year's interviews. And she's like, we had some guy come in. He came in the initial interview with like a trial bag, and everybody was like, oh well, maybe that's okay. Like maybe he's working or something. And then like halfway through the interview, he pulls a rabbit out of the trial bag, and I was like,
no.
a live rabbit? And she's like, yeah, a live rabbit. And I was like, wow. Unbelievable. So don't pull a rabbit out of your bag. That's another good piece of advice. But also be respectful of the folks' time. Now, Noreen, I'm not going to ask you what you bill out at, but I'm sure it's a hefty price. And if somebody is sitting down with you for 45 minutes for a conversation, you could otherwise be billing that for your firm. It's not like you're getting paid to do these interviews. So
right.
It's, be respectful of the people's time, because that is a lawyer's, commodity, and that's what they trade on. And if the last thing you want to do is have anybody, show up and have anybody like think like, oh, wow, that was a waste of my time. I wish I can get that 45 minutes back. So that's just my take on it. And, feel free to add any color, as we move along here.
Well, can I just echo your judgment point for 1 second, because I think it's so important, and particularly with the story about Mark, because I think someone who's, and I do this myself, but someone who's very experienced, particularly litigators and white-collar litigators would do this, to test someone's judgment, the easiest thing to do is to create a very familiar environment and see if they get overly familiar. So, for instance, I actually like to be very conversational with people, but you want to, there are times where people get too familiar and then they overstep a boundary and start talking about, the date they went on last night. And it's not that I'm personally offended by that. It's that I assess, I'm like, if I left this person alone in a room, in a conference room with a client, what are they going to talk about? And I'm not there to step in front of the train, right? Are they going to start talking about politics with their eye look?
I was going to say, like, wait, you can't pull out your Tinder app and be like, hey, what do you think of her?
No,
you
you totally can't do that.
Swipe right, swipe left,
No.
that's not a problem? Okay. Then, yeah, maybe there's
But you'd be surprised.
maybe there's a reason why they never left me in the room with a client. Yeah, no,
But you want to also be able to inspire them that you can connect to someone personally. So you want to strike that perfect balance of connecting to someone personally, maybe talking about something personal, like you both enjoy whitewater rafting or whatever it is, and all that's good and fine.
Right.
But I think knowing your boundaries is really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All right, so back to the interviews. Let's talk about the 20-minute on-campus interviews. When you do them, what are you looking for? What are the questions that you ask? I'm assuming that they're not the, state the rule against perpetuities and give me 3 examples where it doesn't apply. It's more, how do you look at those as icebreakers? And
yeah, I would say it all depends who we send on campus. It all depends who we send on campus, but I think the majority of the people that we do send are on the recruiting committee, so they're aware of what we're looking for, cultural fit. If we feel that would be a good fit for our summer program. So we usually send the folks that are truly involved in the summer program and can talk to it. And it is an icebreaker because our callbacks are an intense half day full of interviews, usually including a lunch or breakfast or dinner with the attorney. So you only get to meet usually 2 of the attorneys at our 20-minute interviews on campus, and the callbacks you get to meet a handful of them. So definitely I would say the 20-minute is an icebreaker. Noreen, do you have anything to add to that?
Do you send alums to the school?
Yes. Yeah, if we can. Yeah, a lot of our recruiting committee is comprised of alum with our local schools. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
And a lot of them, I'm sorry. So before the on-campus interviews, a lot of the students have already met with folks during our on-campus liaison events or affinity groups that we've held events for. So sometimes it's not the first time that they're meeting them. So I would suggest if you plan on interviewing for a specific firm to attend those liaison events that those firms are hosting so that you can make those connections prior to the on-campus interviews. You'll have something more to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. I hear that from a lot of other recruiting folks is that the cocktail receptions, while sometimes they get to be so many and so tedious because of just the number of them, are really important ways to sort of get to know the firm, right? And get to know people at the firm who will then be an advocate for you to say we should give this person an interview during OCI, or even be an advocate and say, oh, I remember tomorrow we should bring them back for a callback. On the callback interview this is something I always like to remind folks, but like the lunch is definitely part of the interview, right?
Correct.
It's not like it's
absolutely.
Yeah. When I was doing interviews, we'd have to fill out the little sheet. Do you guys have to fill out like a sheet afterwards, for every attorney that encountered that prospect?
Yep. It's a feedback form. We usually do an evaluation.
So the fact that you order a double martini at lunch, that's going to be a problem, right?
Yeah, that would probably be a problem.
That usually comes up.
Yes, that does happen. We're saying it tomorrow. This is not
I know. It wasn't me, but I definitely had a couple of people come through and they're like, "Hey, we're going to lunch now." I'm like, "Okay, let's go to lunch." And then they instantly order like the double. I'm like, "Oh my God, that was brutal." I'm like, "It's still going on, my friend. What are you, crazy?" So,
yeah,
and what do you guys
think you want to be authentic.
Right. And you want to be authentic, but you also, as you mentioned before, Noreen, you don't want to get too relaxed that, these people are not, you probably haven't made the connection yet where like they're going to invite you to a wedding. These are still people who are evaluating you as a candidate to come and work for, to have the job that they have, My test was like
for sure.
Yeah, could I see myself working with this person until 2 a.m.? Like I was apt to do. Like that was my basic litmus test. The first litmus test for the the OCI was, could I have a beer with this person? And frankly, I'll have a beer with anybody. But the callback interview was like do I see this person fitting in with the firm culture? And every firm, if you haven't, for those folks who are listening, if you haven't learned, every firm does really have a different culture. I do remember going to a callback interview at a very, very posh New York City firm where, the guy behind the desk was wearing a jacket. And I was like, do you guys have a jackets on always policy here? And he's like, oh, yes, we do. I was like, wow, we should go to lunch because this is not going to work for me. Because, and that's yet another good point is that the student should be interviewing the firm as well, like to see, like, could I even see myself here? Even if it's the most prestigious firm in the world, it doesn't matter if you get the offer if you're going to be unhappy there,
One more thing that I think is really important about callback interviews is we're also looking how you treat our staff as well, because we're involved in those recruiting committee meetings after as well. So were you polite to the receptionist? Were you polite to the waitress? So it's the little things like that they're also looking for. My old firm, they used to have the receptionist fill an evaluation as well. So that does happen.
Oh, I love that. Oh, great. That's awesome. Yeah. That's how they say that you can learn a lot by, how somebody treats their cab driver. I guess Uber driver now. Yep. Or your waiter. And it's true. Every person I've ever, who's ever been rude to a waiter in front of me has turned out to be somebody that I really would want to hang out with.
Yep.
So that's a really good point. I never even thought of that or heard that, but that's great that you guys do that as well. In terms of, after you've gone through the callback stage, you met with you mentioned that it was a bunch of attorneys. First of all, how long is the day, callback day, and how many folks do you interview with?
It's a half a day. We call them blitz days. We bring in other students, and we just rotate them through the conference rooms. The attorneys usually spend 2 or 3 full days doing callback interviews for us. So they'll probably meet 5 to 7 attorneys during the callback. Usually a lunch, like I said, or dinner, or breakfast, or whatever, how that day works out. So.
Wow, and how long are the interviews?
Usually a half day. So if they come in at maybe 9 or 10, and then they'll do a lunch at the end, or they'll come in around 1, and then they'll do a dinner at the end.
So, but for each attorney, is it what, a half hour or 45 minutes? Is that what you're?
Half hour, 20 minutes. Yeah. Yep. And they're usually two attorneys at the same time, and sometimes the recruiting staff will jump in too if needed, because sometimes the attorney schedule varies from hour to hour.
Noreen, what kind of questions do you ask during this process?
I would say I stayed fairly. I might ask a few questions about their resume, like if they who went to the same college, or they studied something interesting, or that sort of thing. But I try to just engage them in conversation or something that interests them, just to see, their presentation skills, again, their ability to connect with me personally. Like you said, 90% of what you're looking for is someone who demonstrates good judgment about, connecting in a professional environment with someone they don't know. And demonstrates the ability to potentially inspire confidence. I don't even know how you measure that. There's sort of an it factor, right? Like, is this person, right. I'm going to teach them the law. They don't know anything about the law or how to practice it. None of us did. So we have to teach them all
right.
that. But do they have the raw materials to eventually stand on their own 2 feet, get on the phone with the client, inspire confidence, have judgment? It's a lot. It's a very hard thing to try to assess in 30 minutes, but you try your best to sort of get at it. And likability and culture is huge. You definitely spend more time with people at the law firm than you do your family, sadly. And if you're not compatible, it's really just not a comfortable environment. So you're quite right. Even though you might have a great, opportunity to get a credential on your resume someday from a law firm, if you think it'll be miserable, you likely won't be successful. So it's not worth doing.
Right.
I would say.
Right. What about post-interview follow-ups? Handwritten notes, emails, are those okay?
Actually, it's funny. I don't care. I mean, I've never once said, I can't believe that kid didn't thank me for the interview. I've often just perused them and didn't care at all. I sort of think you're taking a risk by sending one because you might have a typo. God forbid the typo.
Right.
Yeah. The typo, right? So it's the risk of saying something. You're almost like putting yourself out there. I don't think anyone expects them or dares to get them. They're perfectly fine. I could care less. Unless you make a very particular connection with someone. You hit it off with them. Maybe you talk about a book or something, and you go home and you follow up on it, and you write them and you say, so enjoyed meeting you. I looked at that author. It's X. Hope you get it someday on Amazon. That's kind of a note that I would appreciate and think about. The others are, fine. They sort of go by, but I don't think you need to spend, I don't think it needs to be done. I guess I would say that. Tamara, I don't know if you disagree. I've heard different views on that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. We received them, and I'll be honest with you, I put them into a folder, and they sit there. So if the student feels compelled to do it, I think it's fine. But if it's not done, it's not looked upon negatively.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought that it would have been frowned upon.
I think during we're interviewing like 20, 30 students, so getting those emails, I think, for the attorneys, I think is not as big of a deal. If you're interviewing for a lateral position and there's like 2 other candidates, I think that would stand out more so than in this process.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, we get a billion emails a day. Just one less email is awesome. I appreciate that more.
Gotcha. Good to know. Good to know. I'm not even going to send you a thank you note for doing this now. All right? I'm just going to hang up. All right? let that be a lesson to you, Noreen. All right?
Good.
So I imagine that, I know McGuireWoods recruits heavily at, a lot of schools, that actually, we work with you on in terms of the Law Preview Scholarship Program, right? So you recruit heavily at UVA, right?
Yep.
And all the large schools, the Georgetowns of the world. If you're attending a regional school, like talk to the guy from Albany Law School who wants to get a job in McGuireWoods' New York office. What kind of legwork am I going to have to do for that?
I think we spoke about it a little bit earlier, but I think finding the connection at the firm, the alumni from the school that you went to, or some sort of connection, or even just inviting the attorney out for coffee so that you can understand what they're looking for and making those connections, or attending events that the law school is having, that the law firm's having at the law school. Just something that makes you stand out from the other students. Showing the initiative, putting yourself out there, I think is huge.
Right.
Yeah, and
Noreen, you would add
something differentiator. Yeah, so maybe identifying some differentiator, whether it's military service or, having a diverse background of some variety, whatever that may be, that just maybe will spark someone's interest. I think that could definitely get you a look. I have to tell you, I've often said, I'd rather take, top of the class at sometimes a regional school than middle of the class at Harvard. I mean, I've seen time and again kids who are honestly, maybe they're first generation, maybe they just didn't do so well in the LSATs, whatever it is, but they worked really hard and they're scrappy and they do really well and they're really good lawyers. So it's I think a lot of lawyers, particularly litigators, acknowledge that there's a lot of legal talent out there that's not necessarily academic, and that folks who maybe excel academically don't necessarily make the best lawyers. So if you can sort of inspire that, sort of click into that, you might get a shot there as well.
Gotcha. So do you have people who email you out of the blue saying, hey, I went to NYU and I see that you went to NYU as well? And, can we make a connection where I can learn more? So does that happen a lot?
It happens. I get 10 of those a year.
Or is it like,
from NYU
is it like
people.
friend of a friend? Like, I know Noreen, and let me connect the two of you guys. Because I would imagine
It's
it would be
both.
hard to send out a cold email to the managing partner of McGuireWoods.
Both, and it's both. I definitely get some cold emails, and I read them quickly. Some of them are interesting and some of them aren't. That's just what the case may be. And sometimes I'll forward them on, see if we can bring them in. And we have brought some people in that way. I mean, a couple, here and there, because I saw something interesting in what they wrote. Again, like something like, I'm just on military services on my mind, because we hired a vet out of a clerkship who was awesome. So, if there's something, first of all, make it short, and whatever your spark is has to be really clear really fast, right? If
Right.
it's just, and there's some things I know we may not have as much interest in, like there's a lot of folks who are doing LLMs, like foreign students, and there's certain kinds of practices for which that would be suitable, not necessarily ours, so I just kind of pass by those, but they come a lot as well.
Gotcha. Wow, that's kids today. I didn't realize that they were, emailing the managing partner saying, I'd love to come work for you. I would have probably, I would never have thought that would be, something that would be responded to. But good for you guys. That's awesome.
I think that shows
Tamara,
initiative too for the students.
Yeah, no,
there's
no reason not to. I mean, I'm constantly telling my kids, the world does not reward passive people. Like you should definitely put yourself out there. But I would have thought going through the ranks of either trying to find a connection, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's a, friend, family, anybody you meet, or, just a cold email to the managing partner that's a gutsy move. I mean, and I guess you have to really show some spark for that. But good for you, Noreen. You're not expecting, thank you notes, but you're responding. You're responding to cold call emails. All right. Did you happen to give the Nigerian prince your? I was going to say, did you happen to give them the Nigerian prince your bank account information as well? So let's talk about tomorrow. You mentioned before that the folks that you send out for the interviewing are on the hiring committee. Once the the pink sheets have come back on all the candidates who have gone through your hiring program or your recruiting program, what happens once the hiring committee selection committee meeting starts? And does it happen on a rolling basis? And what are folks are advocating for, advocating against? What do you see are the major big red flags or green flags, I should say, as well?
Yeah, so after our Blitz days, we like to meet immediately so we can talk about them and just get different people's perspectives, because some attorneys will say that was a really good interview and some will say they bombed our interview, or they'll say one thing to one attorney and they'll say something completely different to another attorney. Like they'll walk into two corporate attorneys and say, oh, I want to do corporate, and then in front of two litigation attorneys, they'll say, I want to do litigation. Like make sure the story is consistent throughout the interview, because we're going to talk about it afterwards and we're going to try and figure out if that person's the best fit for the firm. And they're not going to want to spend their time and money with a candidate that's going to say one thing to someone else and turn around and say something completely different. So there's definitely been times that we've had candidates say two completely different things and we're like, not sure they're going to fit that well here. So confidence and consistency, I think, would probably be something that comes up quite a bit with us in our committee meetings. So,
one thing we also talked about tomorrow, which is worth mentioning, is the city connection. So it's important if you're interviewing in a city that's not obviously you're connected to, like either you didn't grow up in or you're not going to school, or like let's say you grew up in New Jersey and you go to UVA and you're interviewing at the McGuireWoods Charlotte office, you need to make a strong case to the people that you talk to about why Charlotte is the right spot for you, so that they can echo that in the committee, because on its face, people say, oh, this doesn't make any sense. This person's not invested in a long-term future in Charlotte. Maybe they just want to, maybe they met this one or that one, I want to hang out in Charlotte for the summer, and that's not really what we're looking for. So you really need to make a case that you want to make a life in that city and want to invest in the firm potentially.
Yeah, and we find a lot of the career services will tell you to concentrate on 2 cities. So we try and figure out if it's, do you really want to be in Charlotte or do you want to be in DC? So, and I know they do that so that they have the best options for them. But when it comes down to the hiring committee, we're like, are they really going to spend the summer with us and want to accept a fall position with us, or are they going to want to spend the summer with us and then get a fall position in DC? So we try and weigh out that during the committee meetings to find out if they're truly interested in the region that they're interviewing in.
And if they spent the summer with you and you liked them, and then ultimately they, either, decided that they want to go work in New York, or, their, fiance is finishing up her degree at Columbia, is that a problem for you guys? Like, would you, would it be something where they could, possibly start in the New York office? Or do you give them that?
We actually had one summer from Charlotte is now currently in the New York office. But it doesn't happen a lot. But we do, for the right person and the right candidate, and if the situation works out, I think the firm's open to that. We'd rather have them in our New York office than not have them at all at the firm, because we've invested the time and money in them. And if they're good candidates, I think the firm's willing to make those arrangements.
Right. Gotcha. All right. So for my final question, in the unlikely event that, folks don't get the 2L summer associate position that they're longing for, or maybe they get the job, and they ultimately decide, like, wow, this was not the place for me. And they have to put themselves back out in the market as a 3L. What suggestions do you have in terms of hiring for 3Ls? Do you guys do it? And if so, what are some successful strategies?
Well, I guess let me just start by saying there's a couple different ways where you start that process, right? So if you are a 2L who did something other than go to a big law firm, like you did the Federal Defender's Office, or you got judicial clerkship, and it worked in the law in some way that's interesting and with skill building, I think you still have some solid footing in the market. And there are definitely firms that, and tomorrow we can talk about our history of 3L recruiting, but certainly a lot of firms will recruit in the 3L market. But it's for people who either have done that or did a 2L summer and have an offer they don't want to accept. But I think the place you kind of never want to find yourself, and is very challenging to dig out of, is having done a 2L summer and you don't get an offer. It's just, that's just a very challenging place to be, and you have to have an extremely compelling story. And usually and I wouldn't go to a firm like this, but there are firms that are upfront going to say they're not going to hire all of their summer class, and so to not have an offer is not necessarily such a dark mark, but that's a really challenging place to be. But if other than that, I think there's certainly a 3L market. You can go back into OCI on a lot of these campuses. And Tamar, you have a better sense of what our level of recruiting there is. So.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of 3L because we're really, like I had mentioned before, we're pretty intentional about our summer programs. We do a lot of planning and strategic planning with the department chairs to make sure that we're hiring the right amount of summer associates so that we can make offers to them in the fall. So we have done it in the past, but like Noreen said, it's usually for 2Ls, or it's people that have had summer associate positions and received an offer but decided they didn't want to be in New York, or they wanted to be in a different region. But just echoing what Noreen said, it is pretty difficult in the 3L market. But I would suggest, like Noreen said, if you don't receive a summer associate position, taking some other position so that you can grow and learn and show that you had the initiative to do something other than, I worked on a boat all summer. Something that would show that you were with the rest of your class learning and growing that summer. And I think, even in a judicial externship, something, or, working for a professor, over the summertime, just something to show that you're continuing to learn and grow.
Right. So Noreen, let me your comments made me think of a couple of things. First off, the realist in you, and this is advice I had to give somebody one time when they made the wrong selection with the firm, right? So they thought they were coming down to two firms at the end of OCI, and then obviously after the callbacks, and they said, I feel this, but I really want to go to this because they're much more prestigious, and they're in a different stratosphere, as the person said to me. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if that's how you feel and that's what you want, I mean, you should do it. But it's like marrying for money. It usually doesn't work out to be, you usually pay for it in the end. So they ultimately were like, I'm unhappy here. I have an offer. What should I do? And my advice to them was like, okay, well, my advice to you is you take that offer and then put yourself on the market, 18 months from now, rather than try to throw yourself out on a 3L market. Although you had an offer, but it's so much harder, to sort of find your way. That's at least my understanding. So what would you recommend in that situation?
I think that's the exact right advice if you're going to lose the first offer. Like if they say, well, you have to let us know by, sometime after OCI, which I think is unusual, then you might, roll the dice and see if you can get another offer in between. But if you're going to lose the offer, I'd say that's absolutely right. I would take the job, suck it up, right, and do your best. And the other thing we haven't really talked about is clerkships. Clerkships, right. First of all, I think every lawyer should attempt to do a clerkship, no matter whether they want to be a transactional lawyer or a litigator. Transactional lawyers should clerk in Delaware, but if they can. But they should. It's a great thing to do, and it's also a great thing for that person in particular. I would say, put yourself back out of the market in the clerkship market, because judges really like to hire these days people a year or two out, as opposed to right. Straight out of law school. They will do straight out of law school, but you can get a nice clerkship, year out. So I think you're exactly right. Like the idea of forgoing that and rolling the dice is wow. That's not a good plan.
Yeah. So
you can do anything for 18 months.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, you could totally do anything for 18 months. It doesn't seem like it at the time, I'm sure. But, it's usually a slow 18 months. But if you made it through your first year of law school, you can do that in, 9?
Exactly.
So this begs the second question, because you mentioned, students who don't get an offer. So in your experience, whether it was at Latham or at McGuireWoods, what are some stories where people did not get an offer? Because I usually view the big law recruiting program as this is your job to lose, right? If they've let you in the door, and they've given you, first of all, if they've given you the interview, you're qualified to work there. Like now it's just a matter of would anybody want to work with you, right? But you clearly have the chops, whether it's your transcript, whether it's your resume, you clearly have the grades to work there. Now it's just a matter of convincing them that you would fit in. And then but even more so, if you get the offer to become a summer associate, I mean, I wasn't aware that there were a lot of firms who don't give 100% of their offers, but my understanding was that most of them like to, because lawyers are struggle with math, and the 1% they can really understand is 100%. In terms of security after the summer program. So what situations have you seen where students have not gotten an offer? And so our listeners don't duplicate that. It's
dramatic and rare. Yeah, it's hard to duplicate. It's been dramatic and rare, especially like you said at the senior most level, like the senior most tiered law firms. I think you're exactly right. They want 100% offers. They're very focused on getting dinged at the law schools aren't above the law, that they're not giving their offers. But I think as you go down in the market, you might see that some people don't necessarily give 100% of the offers all the time. But I think in the world in which we're kind of swimming, the things I've seen are so dramatic, like theft. That's a thing. That's not a good thing. Like
wait, what? Theft?
Speaking. Oh, yes. Like speaking, these are general stories. I won't necessarily attribute them to any particular law firm, but like things I know of in the market and have experience with some distance. So people who put in false reimbursements, that's a thing. That will get you not an offer. Getting really aggressively drunk at firm events, like aggressive, things where things are,
right.
thrown into pools and such. That might
putting
do it.
stuff on social media.
Yeah.
Putting stuff on social media. Mm-hmm. I had a situation where our marketing department had to call me and tell me about it. That was bad.
Yeah, that's not good. I mean, it's really really bad judgment. Yeah, right. You dig in on that?
I was going to dig in on that, but then I'm like, maybe we'll take this one offline. This is what I want to hear. Yeah. So again, it harkens back.
Experience of someone who just doesn't fit in, or is just really not that smart. Like really, just not going to do well. Just not.
Really.
But it's super super unusual, and it's usually every once in a while, and you'll run across someone and say, "Why did you go to law? You went to law school because you didn't have anything to do." You know what I mean? Like there's just that person. I almost feel bad for them because they say you're just not a lawyer. I'm sorry, but
right.
Just life.
Well,
but they're very rare.
I think that's
super rare. Super rare.
I think that's a great way to end it. Is super rare. It doesn't always happen. It's not going to happen to anybody who's listening on the call right now. But exercise, please, God. And I wasn't even thinking about. I mean, I was a summer in the age of there wasn't even cell phones. I don't think. I mean, or they had you had to carry around a box with them, with a cord. And they certainly weren't taking pictures and video. I can't even imagine right now. Like, oh my God, Tamara, you must have stories upon stories about these kids today. Damn these kids today. But anyway, again, we're going to take this offline. I might actually fly down to Charlotte just to take you out to lunch because I would love to hear some of these. But. We're closing on the end of the time. I would love to give you 8 minutes of your hour back. Thank you very much for your time tonight. This is really helpful for Pipeline of Practice. It's helpful for the law preview students who have sat in on this. And we're also going to obviously record this and broadcast it to a larger audience. So both of you, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it. And Maureen, you won't be getting a thank you note from me or thank you note. There you go. Right? That's the way that's the way I play. All right. I give you what you want. All right.
And I appreciate it, Don. I appreciate it.
I know you do. I can imagine that's the last thing you want is another email from me. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.